And thanks to all of you who are joining us either live or listening to this down the road in a recording. Uh, to pick up a little bit on what Matt was saying, in this brief segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about who, when, and how. Okay. First of all, who is it that we're trying to reach with this effort? Well, actually, it's three groups of people: the unchurched, the alienated, and the practicing. So let's start with the unchurched. These are folks who don't have a church home. It isn't that they've never heard about God the Father or Jesus. It's just that the whole church going thing just never became a habit. It never clicked for them. Okay, there are plenty of unchurched folks within your parish boundaries. The second group, and you'll see why we distinguish between these three groups. The second group we would call the alienated. These are folks who might have thought of themselves as Catholic as one time. Maybe they practiced the faith to some degree, but something happened. Okay, the wheels came off, and they've become alienated from the faith of their youth, from the faith of their childhood. Okay, folks who fall into this category might need a slightly different approach from someone who is just simply unchurched. All right, maybe a little bit more individual attention based on what it is that caused them to feel alienated in the first place. And then finally, what about the practicing? These are the folks who are already showing up. They're coming to mass. You know, they're participating to some extent in the life of the parish. We all know that we can kind of go through the motions sometimes, but in the case of practicing our Catholic faith, sometimes folks who are showing up, they might not have a real strong sense of having a personal relationship with Jesus. It's a little bit of what Sherry Weddell says in her book Forming Intentional Disciples. Most Catholics would tell you that God is a personal being and not merely an idea. But if you look at their habits of daily life, it's almost like to a lot of us, God is just an idea. You know, we don't really have that daily, as Sean said, that daily dialogue, if you will, with our Lord. So the unchurched, the alienated, and the practicing uh, all need evangelization. So that's the who. What about the when? Okay, part of what we're trying to do with starting or jump starting discipleship groups, um, we want to encourage that initial discipleship team to set a few simple basic goals with about a 6 month time frame. Okay, um, I guess you could say that anything less than 3 months risks being a fire drill, and anything beyond 9 months is probably procrastination. Okay, so initially, um, you're going to want to set a few basic goals focused on those three groups with about a 6 month time frame, give or take. Okay. Well, what about the how? Well, that's what your group, I should say, is going to discuss and discern and decide in these first initial meetings that you're going to have. Okay, how is it? How is it that you're going to reach out to these groups? Again, that's what you're going to decide. You're going to decide what. Another way of putting it would be, what is it that you're going to do? Okay, and it's funny, I was thinking we don't have to talk too much about the where or the why because we've already established where. Hey, it's your parish, it's your parish territory, and why? Well, Sean said in a few different ways. It's because we're disciples of Jesus, and He calls us to make additional disciples by His grace and by His mercy. So, real quickly, what would some simple examples be of what we're talking about here? Well, what about the unchurched? In the guidebook, again, this is just an example. This might not be what you discern, but in the guidebook, it says this goal could be something as simple as putting up a sign that says, "Are you without a church home? Text blank 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 for an invitation to meet our parish," and then just have a way for someone to respond in just a simple, friendly, straightforward way with a little bit of information about the parish and really, ideally, why being a part of that community, that faith family, makes such a positive difference in a person's life. What about the alienated? Again, this is just an example. You have to decide what to do, what the Lord is calling you to do, as we've been saying. You might simply survey parishioners and ask if they know someone who has become alienated from their Catholic faith, who's near them, a neighbor or a friend who lives nearby. And then follow up and ask if they'd be willing simply to set up a cup of coffee between the three of you, with the promise that the purpose is just to listen. We want to reflect our Lord better, and we know that we don't do that perfectly. We just want to hear. We just want to hear your story. We just want to listen. Again, that's just an example. Finally, what about the practicing? Well, this is one area in the guidebook where we make a pretty focused suggestion. Sean's been talking about discipleship groups, and our recommendation is a good initial goal for reaching out to folks who are already showing up, already practicing the faith, would be perhaps to try to start at least a couple or three discipleship groups. Okay, this doesn't have to be a huge parish launch with a big announcement. In fact, sometimes that works against you. But maybe during that 6-month time frame, the initial discipleship team, who, as Sean said, is a discipleship group, could think and pray about who in the parish might be able to constitute another 2, 3, 4 discipleship groups. And here's what's interesting. Even though this initial effort would be directed at folks who are already showing up, what tends to happen is that when folks become engaged in these groups and they develop a stronger sense of personal relationship with our Lord and a sense of mission, they themselves will become really awesome at reaching out to higher parish in 6 months. We're just asking you to set a couple or three modest, achievable goals. Give yourself a taste of initial success by God's grace, or if your efforts aren't entirely successful, then again have that prayerful discussion of where is God in that, and how might God be calling you to tweak your course a little bit. I guess the author G.K. Chesterton comes up too. He says if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly. Well, we're certainly not asking you to do this in an intentionally bad way, but the point is, don't put too much pressure on yourself. It's the Lord who will help your effort bear fruit. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Set some simple goals that focus on those three basic groups, and really you won't go wrong.